Hello and welcome. It's been an eventful year so far across Africa, where politics continues to evolve with heroes of the past leaving trails behind and inspiring the champions of the future. The week ends on a rather sad note, though, following the death of the former United Nations Secretary General and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Kofi Annan. This is Africa This Week, and I'm your guide, Fadisha Lashotingwa. We start off the day with earlier in the week. Welcome on board. On Monday, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa said violence, which followed the country's presidential election, was inspired by the country's main opposition. Mnangagwa made the statement in Harare at his first national address since being declared winner at the poll. His assertion comes days after his rival and main opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, challenged the election result in Zimbabwe's constitutional court. Chamisa's challenge halted Mnangagwa's inauguration ceremony, which had been planned for Sunday, August the 12th.
Director of Ceremonies, Minister of Home Affairs, we however condemn the MDC alliance-inspired violence post our free and fair elections, which resulted in the death of our innocent citizens.
Well, Africa joined the global community in marking World Organs Donation Day on Monday, with health experts enlightening the public on the need for more commitment to organ donation to save lives.
Organs donation is the removal of an organ legally from a person, alive or dead, for the use of someone who has suffered an organ failure and is in dire need of it. The organs could be the kidney, parts of the liver, parts of the intestines or pancreas, the cornea of the eyes or bones. But there are also organs that can be transplanted only when a person is dead but legally left a permission for some or a particular organ in him or her to be given to the needy. Such organs are vital and can only be donated after death, such as the heart, lungs, and the whole of the liver or pancreas. Currently, 13 hospitals are transplanting kidneys across Nigeria. Only one hospital has been able to carry out a bone marrow transplant, and that was in Benin City. Dr. Ebun Bangboye is a nephrologist who deals with kidney transplants. He had a lot to say about organs donation.
So you have living liver donation also existing in different parts of the world. Because we know about skin, you can harvest the skin and go ahead and transplant that. You can harvest parts, strips of bone that you can also transplant. Heart valves, usually not in people that are alive, and then veins as well.
One of the most commonly transplanted organs in Nigeria is the cornea, the outer part of the eyes. But experts say most cornea transplanted here are donated from outside the country, and the process of shipment to Nigeria and payments that have to be made are cumbersome.
Breast milk, urine, sugar water, onion water, battery water, name it, anything goes, they put in the eyes, and all these things are harmful to the eye.
It was also mentioned that about 18,000 Nigerians come up with kidney-related ailments every year. Only about 50 undergo transplants, and only 5,000 are able to go through dialysis, so the rest die. The very reason why health experts are saying there must be compassionate donations.
The cost of transplantation is high. In Nigeria, it's probably between 7 million and 10 million. To do the transplantation, and how many people can afford that?
Under the law, no one is permitted to take a non-replaceable organ from anyone below the age of 18, and the elderly above 65 are not encouraged to donate organs because of the age factor. The Transplant Association of Nigeria is gearing up to announcing stiffer sanctions on commercial organ transplants to curb the tendencies of desperados who would not mind to kill or endanger themselves to get rich through the sale of organs. Jacqueline Ogo, TVC News, Lagos.
A few hours after Nigeria's acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, gave orders to overhaul the country's special anti-robbery squad, the SARS, the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, complied with the directive. And on Tuesday, SARS was renamed as the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, and a new Commissioner of Police was appointed to head the unit. The Commissioner of Police will be answerable to the Inspector General of Police through the Deputy Inspector General of Police Department of Operations. The unit will now operate under the Department of Operations Force Headquarters, Abuja. The acting president also directed the National Human Rights Commission to set up a committee that will conduct nationwide investigations on the alleged unlawful activities of SARS. This, he said, will afford members of the public an opportunity to present their grievances with a view to ensuring redress. The German section of Doctors Without Borders, the MSF, disclosed on Wednesday that migrants recently saved at the Mediterranean Sea by the rescue ship Aquarius told stories of slave trade in Libya, torture, forced labor and sexual violence. The MSF Germany manager, Florian Westphal, told reporters that the 141 migrants who were expected to dock in Malta later on Wednesday included more than 100 Eritreans and Somalis. Amongst the migrants on the boat run by the Franco-German charity SOS Mediterranean and MSF were almost 70 minors, with about 40 of them under the age of 15 and a lot of unaccompanied minors. 5 very small children and 2 pregnant women were also on board. And it was in the news on Thursday that Ibrahim Boubacar Keita was returned as the president of Mali. Keita won 67% of the vote in a runoff against opposition rival Soumaïla Cissé, who alleges electoral fraud and has vowed to reject the results. Keita now faces the giant task of lifting the gold and cotton-producing country out of a spiral of Islamist and ethnic violence. On Friday, the National Economic Council set up a committee to decentralize police operations in Nigeria. Council also requested the deployment of the Police and National Security and Civil Defense Corps, that's the NSCDC, to areas liberated by the army in the northern region.
Security continues to be a source of great concern to political leaders, with attacks on communities continually recorded in the northern part of the country. The National Security Advisor, Babagana Mungunu, is on hand at this meeting to brief the National Economic Council on steps taken by government, and even the Deputy Governor of Benue State. The state most hit by attacks grudgingly acknowledges that there has been a marked improvement.
What we've decided to do is to work on certain methods. For example, the council decided that a committee would be set up with representation from each political zone to be chaired by the Inspector General of Police, so that we'll find ways of decentralizing police operations so that there will be greater access to information, and handling these situations will become much easier rather than a centralized and cumbersome approach.
The National Security Advisor insists that the improvement is not because elections are fast approaching, but is a result of a review of various operations in the theaters of conflict and the introduction of new operations where there have been shortfall. There is still the challenge of engendering cooperation and coordination between the security agencies, but Mungunu says this is being addressed on a daily basis.
It's not easy to coordinate. Yes, coordination, that all security agencies are supposed to be centrally coordinated, but sometimes we have issues. But these issues are being addressed right now, and probably that is why we are beginning to see some improvement. But the truth is that we are dealing with a situation that is asymmetric, that is not normal, it is not conventional. And in dealing with these problems, there will be issues, inter-service issues, inter-agency issues, which my office has been trying to address in the last couple of weeks, and hopefully we should be able to see some improvement.
State governors also bring to council the recent decision of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to probe their use of security votes.
On the EFCC investigating some of the governors, it was discussed at the Governors Forum, and the position is that we'll have our lawyers look at it and see the legality of doing that. And after giving us a report, then we would see the next line of action to take.
Balances of the excess crude account in July rose slightly to $2.2 billion, while closing balance for the stabilization fund was 21 billion naira. Funds that have accrued to the natural resources account also rose slightly to 143 billion naira. Tai Amudu, TVC News, Abuja.
And with that report, we have come to the end of Earlier in the Week. Up next is Digging Deep, and that will be after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Africa This Week. For a continent set to be growing and struggling at the same time, Africa is a complex mix where law and order is often on a collision course with acts of lawlessness, from criminal minds to armed gangs, mere suspects and serial offenders. The role of the police in society cannot be overemphasized. Just that the days when many referred to them as friends are fading fast. Now, joining me to dig deep on Africa This Week is Alfred Kemekbadu, a policy analyst and social commentator. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, what are your thoughts on the activities of the police and the growing call for reforms, especially in Nigeria?
The growing call for reform in the police sector is welcome. It's overdue. It's very timely. It's just that it is our appeal, and it's our desire that the calls are made more effective, and it's not just one of those political calls that we may have witnessed in recent past, especially the most brazen sector of the police, popularly known as SARS, or the FSARS, that's been renamed, you understand. So it's a welcome one, we expect it.
Okay, impunity and abuse of power by security operatives, it has become almost a culture, especially against journalists now, but we're not going to go into journalists. What do you think is the reason why this trend has prevailed?
I think it's because of the much of indiscipline that has permeated the system over time. Indiscipline in terms of the way I think the police, they are supposed to be law enforcement agents, but they've carried themselves most of the time outside the law that they're supposed to enforce. So over time, a bit of rascality has permeated their operations. This is not peculiar to just the rank and file, even from the top, from the Inspector General of Police to every other person. I say this with a whole lot of things. Recently, we have been complaining about the rascality of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, which the Vice President, Yemi Osibanjo, in acting capacity, has called for an overhaul. The rascality of men of the SARS has become something unbearable. I have been a victim of SARS brutality. Not too long, recently in Yenagoa, Bayelsa State, men of this SARS unit, federal SARS, came into the state without notice to even the police structure in the state. I'm giving an example out of many. Came into the state, not even with notice to men of the state, in the name of recovering a stolen vehicle, and spoke shot sporadically into the air, like in their usual manner. And in the course of that, they killed, or should I say they murdered, an assistant superintendent of police by name Akpos Matthew from Ofoni town. One of them. Okay. Probably even before they realized he was an assistant superintendent of police. So we can hear about this and many other ones, you understand. And why I say the rascality permeates from not just among the rank and file, but from the top, is that cases have been made against the police, and even the Inspector General of Police is aware of this. And till today, as we speak, even upon the fact that this mayhem was caused against one of them, nothing has been done, even after the DPP's report. So you begin to think what else they do to ordinary citizens. I have personally seen in the cities of Port Harcourt where men of this special anti-robbery squad come out of their vehicles in black clothing, sometimes appearing even more like the armed robbers they are supposed to. With vehicles that are not branded. I have seen them jump out of Siennas, not just with guns and AK-47s, but with machetes and you begin to wonder. It's so scary what they are trying to do. So
the saying, the police is your friend, does that still stand?
Well, it will still stand to a reasonable extent, because we can't totally write off the police. There are a bit of positives we have seen from fantastic police officers who are also doing their job. But the brigandage and the rascality in their operations is becoming unbearable. And let me just say this. Today we are all talking about SARS. SARS, the operations of SARS is a reflection of what the police is today, and it has to be tamed. But you see, we must also quickly say that as much as we condemn the police a little bit to the left or to whichever areas we are condemning them, I think the police at this particular point in time also needs support. Yeah. Yes, you go to our police barracks.
You know, like you scold the child with the right hand and you draw him closer with the left hand.
The police also need support. You go to the police barracks, you see how dilapidated their barracks are. You move past policemen on the road, you see how their uniforms are unkept. Provisions are not made for them to go on patrol.
Uniforms they have to pay for themselves. With
boots
their
they have to pay
salaries,
for themselves. Their meager salaries. The average policeman in the streets of this country is not insured. He doesn't know what happens to him in case he goes down in the line of his duty. And you know, even when you go to their police stations, they have to pay for their stationaries themselves, and a whole lot of this. So I completely agree that they need to be supported. But while we wait for that support, they also need to carry themselves in a manner that is dignifying and not in this manner that has become so shameful.
Okay, well, in a bid to overhaul SARS, that's following the presidential directive, what other ways do you think the government can look into effective policing in this country? Besides just overhauling it.
Besides just overhauling, you see, we have always, even on this program, we had come here and called for the restructuring of the Nigerian state. And when we talked about the restructuring of the Nigerian state, so many people had thought that we were talking about the dismemberment of the Nigerian structure or the disunity of Nigeria. Part of what they can do to make the police even more effective is to begin to create a platform for the conversation of a restructured Nigerian police. We need to think of how we can make the Nigerian police even more local. We need to understand, we need to restructure the Nigerian police to fit into the peculiarities of every region according to the religion, the tribe, the culture, and if you like, say the geography of the environment, you understand? Because policing does not start with gunning and arrest. Policing starts with intelligence. Policing starts with cautionary. Policing involves more than all of what we can see about the police. So,
well, that is already being considered with the recent call for the decentralizing of the police. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that is what...
That's an almost indirect way of creating state police, you ask me. So.
Well, yeah, if you say state police, fine, but we need to make policing more local. We need to make policing more community-based. And you see...
How do you make it more local than creating state police?
Well, That is what I'm saying, that let it not be the usual political talk because of the politics and the elections that is around the corner.
Okay.
Like I had said here, we had always, it's not only the police that is having a problem in this country. There are a whole lot of things that are having a problem, you understand? The federal government, as it has been stated somewhere, you see, when you say you have a federal system, you understand, one of the basic responsibilities of a federal system, you understand, it is being distracted by this centralization of authorities in the federal system. So the federal government now needs to begin to see how we can begin to decentralize all of these things to get more result and more down to up form and not that up to down
not the
pattern.
pyramid pattern.
Yeah, pattern of.
Well, this committee has already been formed to look into the decentralization of police. How do you think this will play out in the scheme of things, considering the agitations for this state police that we're still talking about?
How do you mean things will play out? Like if it's going to be fruitful?
Yeah, will it guarantee the security of people in the state?
Of course, it will guarantee the security of people in the state because it's not utopian. This is something that is applicable in other climes and in other countries. Understand? Lagos State is already succeeding in ways that have not been legitimately federally approved. So these are case studies that it can work everywhere and elsewhere. So we need to really go that. But you see, the most important thing in this circumstance, it's not for them to, as usual, roll out these talks during the elections. How effective can we implement these proposals and how quickly can we implement these proposals?
You seem to be of the opinion that this call is only coming because of next year's election.
It's very possible because when this administration, with due respect to the president and his administration, when this administration was coming on board, they talked about restructuring. And the restructuring of the Nigerian state included this and many more. At a particular time, the president, who is the head of the government, was now dismissive of the restructuring. Then at a particular, he was dismissive of the restructuring agenda. Then at a particular time when politics was closed, his party, led by the former party chairman Onyegu, fortunately I was also in that panel. I think I was the only non-governmental organization in that panel alongside Onyegu, El-Rufai, and the other people. They talked about the blueprint of the restructuring, how they're going to consider the restructuring. Then after that, they were dismissive of it again. They are in turbulent waters now, and you are now talking about it. So it's only legitimate, it's only fair for anybody, any Nigerian like me, to be suspicious of their moves. It's only fair for any Nigerian, anybody like me, to say they are not sincere with their moves. But however, my suspicion and my pessimism around this whole thing is not as important as my optimism to ensure that this time, let them stay true to what they are proposing because Nigeria needs to move forward. The truth is, Nigeria is not working with the present structure and the state of affairs. You
mentioned the illegal invasion of your state by men of the SARS, and then especially they were not wearing uniform. How do we stop this trend of policemen going about without being in proper identifiable uniform?
It all comes down to discipline in the police. I agree that the police has units that needs to go with for clandestine operations like their SIB and the CID and the rest. But you see, they need an entirely disciplined structure. And let me tell you this, what they need to instill discipline in the police force and the personnel they need to instill is around. They have it in Nigeria. You have the personnel. You have men with experience and expertise. It is just not enforced. And that is why now that the acting president has come to say, this is what we are going to do, it is our prayer that he leads the pack. Because if he leads the pack and the Inspector General, Idris, or any other Inspector General that may come after now leads the pack, hopefully we'll see results. After all, when the former Inspector General, I think Mohammed Abubakar or something, when he was serious about the roadblocks going off the roads, the roadblocks went off the roads.
But they're back.
They are back. But you know, the most interesting thing is that what the roadblocks.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time and we cannot discuss any further. Alfred Kemekpado, policy analyst and social commentator. I'd like to thank you for joining me on Africa This Week.
Thank you.
Well, one of the main issues that have held Africa back as a continent includes the abuse of power, human rights violations, and the desecration of public institutions. Unfortunately, the police have been found culpable in recent times, and no doubt, effective reform would do the police a lot of good. But part of the responsibility also lies on individuals becoming the kind of nation they want to see, bearing in mind that every institution is a reflection of society. That's our program today, and I have been your guide, Fadishola Shutingwa. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now.